Thanks very much for that, Tom. I mean, I really can't. I must comment because I think what you said about collaboration is hugely important. And this does, I'm pleased to say, we have a very strong level of cross-party consensus on this. And you're quite right. Field allowances were invented by actually Alistair Darling and his team then at the Treasury. And pilot was a previous administration's construct, which this administration has carried on. So I mean, there's an awful lot of good collaboration there, and it's very, very pleasing to hear that sort of, I may say it, mature political approach to that. And you're quite right. The trade unions were extremely important. It was great to be able to stand up in Brussels and say to the Brussels technocrats, we have the social partners here in the UK are all in agreement with this. The industry, the trade unions and the regulators and government, we all believe that this is the right way forward. That was a tremendously powerful message to be able to give. Anyway, I'll shut up. Let's get on with the let's get on with the questions in the little time that we've got. And if we don't get through all of these, I think we probably will. Then we'll put them on our website. We'll bother the panellists to answer them and put them on the website then. Can the current rate of investment be sustained in the UK continental shelf? And if it fell, at what level would you get concerned that it had fallen too low? Oh, a good one. Right, Mike, well, we'll start with you at that one, shall we?
Okay. Can we sustain more than 13 billion a year? I'd like to hope so. Will it keep on happening? It depends. There's some massive investments in some very large lumps of oil and gas going through at the minute, and that's bound to be driving high levels. I think by if we're seeing numbers which are looking close to the 8 to 10s in the medium term, that will still be very healthy for the basin, not least 10 billion barrels gives more, 10 billion pounds gives more than a billion barrels. And when you're producing 600 million a year, something like that, then you're eating, you're actually adding to the store cover, whereas you're eating away otherwise. So if we saw it go below sort of 8 to 6, I'd be quite worried. And if we can keep it going currently, brilliant to get on with it.
Roy, anything you want to add to that?
I think the challenge, as I pointed out earlier, is that if we continue to see increasing costs and don't deliver the same things for the money, then it's going to be challenged.
Very good. Tom, anything to add? No. I've got one for you, though. I think
Right,
we'll start with you on this
that.
one, right? The results of focusing on better and productive relationships with government are clearly demonstrated. Collaborating on a competitive framework, how are you going to focus on skillfully managing public perception to ensure that the industry is valued for what it is, invests and produces, and doesn't become the next decade of bankers who have fracked off a whole generation? Okay, get it? Anyway, this is an issue, the perception of this industry. I frankly was slightly disappointed that the brilliant news that we put out at the beginning of this week wasn't really sort of taken up in quite the way I might have hoped it would. I mean, do we have a perceptions problem, and what should we do about it, Tom?
I don't think there's a huge perception problem actually of this industry, but then I'm somebody who knows a little bit about it and has a bit of familiarity with some of the aspects of it. I think actually making the points about jobs, about skilled jobs, about the agenda in terms of developing skills and transitioning people from coming out of different industries or different fields of work into this industry, all those things I think demonstrate adding the value to the wider economy. And I think actually those are points, as well as obviously this report and what you were saying in the media on Monday and what you were saying on Tuesday and this morning. People are going to focus on the numbers of the activity, the production, the exploration, but developing that into what that means in terms of jobs and skills and contribution to the wider economy, I think are where you can help to actually get across some of these perception problems that I think do exist. And where they exist, it's people who don't really have much of an appreciation. And I think that's the best way of getting a wider appreciation away from those people, like those of us in this room and others who are interested in the economics and the energy aspects of it.
Yeah, it's something we're determined to do, by the way. Mike, you want to?
I've probably always said my views on this, that I'd love it that the people in government at the top level were as proud as what we do as they are of some of the other things. We don't go and eat children or anything like that. We actually do some amazing things for. I joined as an engineer. I was working rugby in GEC, designing steam turbines. I moved from an era where anything I designed would take 25 years to go wrong to something where if I did something offshore, it shut down within minutes. Everyone heard about it. And you know, it is such an exciting industry, and we're so good at it, and yet so often people are afraid to admit it.
Yeah, it's very good. The quality of our product too, as well. If you think of the way that we follow product all the way down the line, you know, the idea of the sort of horse scandal happening in our industry is just unbelievable. It just could not happen because our quality control is horses and go. Roy, what do you want to comment on that? No, you're okay with that? Okay. Skills. We were talking about skills, so here's a further question on skills. It's good to see the increase in investment, but what percentage of that will be on skills and training issues to ensure that we have the numbers of people to fill the highly skilled roles that are required? So that's a general question about investment in skills and the like. Roy, do you want to come in on that to start with, and then we'll come to the others after?
Yeah, I mean, for the future, it is critical that we develop the skills. We do, I think, as we all know, have a shortage of skills generally across the industry, and we and many others in the business now are not only investing in developing our own people, but also looking at some other areas in the sector, outside the sector, where there are surplus of people, and attracting those to the industry. And just referring back to the last question about getting the message out that this is a great and exciting place to be. I think there's an opportunity there for us to be much more vocal about what's going on in the oil and gas sector, and trying to encourage more people with already developed skills in that we can then get into the oil and gas arena and bring them on. Yeah. So I actually suspect a lot of money is going to be spent in the industry developing people.
Yeah. Tom, any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that you start as early as possible with this. I mean, I've seen a couple of projects in Aberdeen where you're starting in schools, because going back to the previous point about perceptions of what people think the oil industry is about, and particularly I would say also particularly with girls as well. Yeah. Because I'm part of probably that generation of people where amongst my counterparts when we went to university, most people I know did art subjects. I did some sensible ones did law. Idiots like me did things like government and politics, but we didn't have that many who did engineering degrees amongst my cohort of people that I was at through sixth form with. We need to change that. That's partly about government actually. It's also about not trying to do that at the point at which people are applying to make their university choices. It's about doing that much earlier, and looking at the wide range of career opportunities there are, and getting into that and trying to get more women involved at that point. So you need to start right there. I'm very conscious that in my constituency, which is in the west of Scotland, I have a number of people I know who work offshore. They're in their 50s now, so they're getting towards their end of their working lives, and they worked in engineering-related businesses that went out of business fairly young, early in their careers, that went out of business in the 80s in western central Scotland, retrained and worked offshore. But then you've got that bubble, and then what you have behind that. And so I think addressing that best for the future is starting very early, dealing with issues around the breadth of opportunities and skills, making sure that's a focus on women as well as men. And that's the best way of getting a sustainable mix of people. Right.
Very good. Yeah. In some ways, it's a nice challenge to have. You're absolutely right about we're missing out on a huge portion of the talent pool, particularly offshore, where it's very, very difficult to see a woman. Does the panel feel that operators who have received help from the UK taxpayer through field allowances to progress oil and gas projects should feel obliged to place construction work related to those projects in UK yards? The localisation issue. Who should we start with? Roy? You're looking at me.
Well, we have placed orders with UK yards and other areas in supply chain in the UK. I have no particular comment on whether we should feel obliged to or not.
Mike?
I'd hope they take a jolly good look at British capability, and I hope the British capability matches their expectations.
Yeah.
Underneath it all, it's still money you've got to spend wisely, and the taxpayer is no keener than anyone else for you to waste that money, so spend it wisely, but just look at the capability, and I hope the capability is there. Yeah,
I mean, luckily we do have a world-class beating supply chain here, and I think John Hayes said in Parliament the other day that on recent projects, over 75% of the spend was in the UK supply chain. So,
I would unashamedly say that any company in this sector should be doing absolutely everything possibly can to ensure that the supply chain jobs are with UK companies as far as it's possible. I understand the point that it's not always. There are also obviously issues about supply and demand from time to time, and also capability. but as far as you can, and also to help encourage those. If there are gaps, and there are deficiencies in abilities and skills, then try and encourage some of those companies to develop them, because I think then that again goes back to the earlier point about anchoring this industry in a much wider perspective in terms of UK economic activity.
Brilliant. I've got one last question, if I can just, and can you just think of one suggestion for this, the answer to this, okay? How can we work better with the UK and Scottish governments to promote the reality of a strong industry focused on technology, enterprise and increasingly export-driven? Okay? Just a helpful suggestion from each of you, something that where we might work better at that. Michael, should we start with you and come along to Tom? We'll go Michael, Roy, Tom, and then we'll close.
My lord. We've got an employment map that shows how employment is spread across the UK, and there's not one single constituency where our industry doesn't touch and provide employment. That'd be my one.
For me, the important thing is dialogue with government, with the regions.
Yeah, great.
I would just say, and obviously I would say this, wouldn't I, because I'm an opposition member, but it's also about people who could be governments in the future, making sure people properly understand the dynamics of the industry, understand the issues, and that's the best way of ensuring you've got as much consensus as you can have, and a degree of continuity depending on what might or might not happen.
And I can assure you we'll carry on doing that.
I know you do very well.
Okay, fine, we're going to have to bring it to a close there. Could you just please, they don't get anything else except for your thanks, so could you please join me in the usual way and thank our speakers.